Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Okay, Joel, so we just agreed before we started the show, we're going to twist and not twist, but we're going to modify the topic a little bit. And the key word that's involved in our modified topic today is compare or comparison.
Yes.
Which is actually pretty appropriate because we live in a culture today that is, I think it's safe to say it's inundated with comparison.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Completely. And I don't want to be the old dude always blaming social media, but social media is a platform of comparison, basically.
Well, it is, yeah.
Yeah. And I think people see things and they judge their life by the perspective of where someone else is at. And that creates a feeling of lack. It creates, I'm less than, I am not as important as that person. And, one of my Facebook posts today was about, comparing people's 100% effort. Like some people are out there, their 100% effort looks like, working out 2 times a day, starting 2 businesses while maintaining, by completing all these things. That's one person's 100%. Another person was able to get up this morning, his 3rd day of recovery from addiction, and is just happy to be sober today. That's his 100%. Yeah. And, the problem is you start comparing the 100%, and they're an individual thing because everybody is on that journey. Along that journey, where are you at? And that's the process. But the comparison with social media does not allow for the where you at in the process. It's like the end result is everybody's supposed to look like this super muscled up dude or this really beautiful fitness model. Then that's what everybody's supposed to look like because there's so many of those people that show up on Instagram. So it's the average person who doesn't have time to be doing all the stuff they're doing for that feels that they are less than. And so the comparison is very, very detrimental to people.
Which is kind of odd when you think about it, because it turns out there are absolutely no people who fit those images. I mean, even the ones who we think they do, you look closer, they don't actually fit the images. Well, you deal with that. I mean, you have clients who are often, the high profile people. You get to see them up close. You get to see their flaws, their warts. So even they have the flaws and the warts. There's no perfection in it.
There's no perfection. When you sell perfection, one of my big arguments for a long time is, again, social media suggests perfection exists. So anything less than perfection is not good enough. So good doesn't work because it's not perfection.
Yeah. How about that?
And so I always state that, there are different times that you can look at my life and then make comparisons. So August 17th, 1995, when was my last day to gamble and everything fell apart, looks a lot different than my life today.
Oh, yeah.
You can't compare. If you were comparing yourself to me back then, you're like, oh, that poor dude, man, he has nowhere to go. Compare yourself today. He said, man, he's really fortunate. Look, it's a whole different, an entirely different version. It's the same person, just along a different part of the journey. And, and not, there's, I forget the quote, who said it, but, comparison is the thief of joy. And that is something that you can't be joyous and then be comparing yourself to everyone else or thinking that this person has a better life or whatever. And it's everybody has their stuff, and it's just being able to accept that and understand it and make your mission the individual thing that all that matters. I have, at this point in my life, I'm not comparing myself with another human being. I'm my own barometer. So where I'm at, I try to compare myself with where I was, where I'm hoping to be going. Like as I'm aging, I know there is things that come along with aging, but if I compare my strength to where it was a year ago, which is still comparable. So I look at those things, not as any way of harmful, but I use that as a comparison to where I was. I have goals where I'm going to go, but there's nobody else in my comparison. There's these young guys in the gym that, they're like, I don't need to compare myself with them. They're where I was 30 years ago.
Which makes total sense. I'm also reminded of something else. I went to a celebration of life a couple of weeks ago in Virginia. My niece's father passed away in January, and this was a celebration for his life. He died in the middle of a snowstorm, literally just fell over dead. And from what the doctor said after examining the body, he probably died before he hit the ground.
Oh, wow.
It was like literally out of nowhere. I mentioned that simply because you mentioned how, when you get older, you can be experiencing more issues and so forth. He really didn't. Now, he wasn't all that old. I mean, he was in his 60s, but nevertheless, it went pretty quick. So we don't even know that for sure. We don't even know for sure that we're going to experience those kinds of things. And we can certainly take a lot of, I would say, self-discipline into account and make our lives better by simply deciding how we're going to focus and deciding what we're going to do and what kind of activities we're going to do and what kind of health routine we're going to follow and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And those routines are, yours to determine, and comparing them to other people's routine doesn't do you any good.
Doesn't. No, not really.
And that's the point. I mean, I still lift very heavy weights. I still work out every day. I would, all kidding aside, I don't recommend that for most people my age. Not just because it's not, I've done this literally for 50 years.
Yeah, you've literally built up to it.
Yeah. So my body's prepared to be able to do this, is why I'm still able to do it. I'll encourage everyone to exercise, but I don't think anybody needs to, who hasn't exercised in 10 years, try to go do a 500 pound deadlift tomorrow.
No, not really. No.
It's just not going to work well. It's not healthy. So, just within that understanding, a lot of young people look at what everybody else has, or they compare, and it's just, it creates depression, it creates anxiety, it creates these things. And while I'm sure there was comparison when I was younger, and I remember it like on minor levels, some people had the good shoes, some people had the Kmart shoes, and when you're in middle school, you mentioned all that stuff, but that wasn't much compared to what it is today.
Not really, no, but it was still there. The comparison still happened. I mean, it's not like comparison's brand new.
Right. But now it's in your face, and it shows up on your reel, and the comparison is so extreme. That one of the hard things I'm working with young people is they really believe that it's so easy to just start some kind of streaming or something online and make $10 million in a year. They think, and I'm like, okay, that does exist, but again, that's very rare for it to exist. And the idea that the odds are against you to do that. You can't, I never discourage people from trying things, but you still got to pursue a normal job. You still have a career or some way to make a living. It's just, that's life.
Exactly. So what we're really talking about here is not just avoiding falling for the comparison trap, because that's really what it is. It's a trap, but it's also deciding what you're going to do instead. I mean, you just outlined how you can kind of get into that trap game of trying to shoot for the long shot, but it's really helpful if you can actually shoot for the short shot too, because you're much more likely to get that one, even if it pays less. And by aiming for that, now you got a win under your belt. With that win under your belt, it actually becomes easier to go after the long shot. Now the long shot becomes tolerable and even possible in a way that probably would happen before, because if you didn't have the short shot in place, your vibration would probably never be high enough that you could even hit the long shot. It just wouldn't.
I know a few wealthy people that, not majorly wealthy, but people have done very well, that they continue to make good money. They work every day and they buy $10 worth of lottery tickets every Friday.
Yeah, sure.
So it's not a gambling problem. It's just that they're taking a swing at the big money, but nonetheless, they're not taking their eye off of what's necessary. Right. And that is stuff like that matters when you understand. If you have to be able to, understand how this whole process works, how you going forward. And people, what frustrates me with, and using a bigger concept, but the comparison is a part of this. Comparison, people want to use and compare and jump. They want to bypass the stuff that's necessary to get someplace. So if I'm somebody that I want to all of a sudden have a perfect body or have $10 million, everybody wants to skip that process. And the part that's lost in that, the most important part is the process. That's the process to me was the thing that meant the most. It's it's the up and down. It's not knowing I was going to make it. And, that process was amazing for me. And when
Mhm.
I'm in the middle of it, I didn't always appreciate the process. I kept waiting for the other side. But in retrospect, I now understand the process was the whole point.
I can even tell you a story that occurred within the last few days. Well, it started about 2 months ago, but it culminated 2 days ago. And it pretty well illustrates what you're talking about. So let me share it. As listeners know, my brother gave me a keyboard for Christmas about 5 years ago. And so I've been re-teaching myself how to play a keyboard. I took piano lessons when I was very young, and then I played guitar for about 15 years. And then I stopped playing music in my late 20s. So I'm picking it up, some 40 years later. And I've been enjoying it. I've been having a good time. In fact, I've been having such a good time reteaching it to myself, relearning it, that this year I decided I want to try to play in a band again. That would be fun, So I've been reaching out. I'd actually found a band. We had gotten together. They were just forming. They hadn't gotten any gigs or anything like that. But these were all experienced musicians, all around my age, played for years. Very top quality musicians. I said, well, this sounds pretty good. And we made the commitment that we were going to be a cover band. We were going to play stuff that was danceable, that was popular, and we weren't going to bring any egos into it. And I said, whoa, this sounds great. All right, I'm looking forward to it. This is going to be great. Well, it wasn't quite so great. I mean, don't get me wrong. The guys are good guys. They really are. There's also a woman who was a singer. And it was going pretty well in many ways, but I could just tell there were certain times where we were starting to go off the rails, and I wasn't really feeling comfortable about the whole thing. The deal breaker for me was when we had two of the people. This was a 6-person band before I quit. 2 of them were away on trips, and it was actually for a practice session tomorrow night. That was when the next practice session was scheduled. So it's going to be just 4 out of 6, and one of the things we talked about was that there was going to be no egos. This is basically a balanced contribution thing. No, this is just the band together. There's no lead players here. Well, the bass player got into his mind that the 4 of us who are remaining, we're going to have to work on songs, and then we'll just, we'll bring the others up to speed when they get back, which kind of went against what we were talking about. I didn't like that too much. But the thing I disliked even more was they said, well, we want to turn this we want to do some real practice. We want to drill some of this stuff. I said, okay, great. Here's what I'd like us to do. I'd like us to turn the volume down, and I'd like us and have the drummer get out he has one of these electronic drum kits that you can plug into a PA, so he doesn't have to play the drums real loud. So everybody's volume can come down. And then I want us to work on actually slowing things down and playing pieces of the song and making sure we have everything in sync with each other, and we know exactly where the harmonies are and who's playing what solo. Basically break it down like that, because that's how you practice something. And they didn't want to do that. They just wanted to do playthroughs. Well, playing through isn't practicing.
Right.
There's no, you were talking about the process, right? There's no process in that. You just playing it through, that's not a practice.
Right.
And I objected to that. And then the drummer jumped in and said, well, I'm not going to play with, my electronic drum kit. You're going to have to put up with the fact that I'm playing at full volume. And that was the deal breaker for me, because I realized just what you were saying. These guys, despite what they had said earlier, really were not serious about the process.
Yeah.
They just wanted it to be, let's just jam. Let's have fun, but they wanted to call it a practice.
Well, and that's, so many people do that. And that, and the term trust the process. I take that even further. You trust the process until you love the process.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I've learned to love the process. The process is where everything took place for me. So I have no problem operating in the process of all that. Right. I understand how you adjust. You just what you're talking about. You along the way you have to keep working and adjusting and correcting course. You by just saying we don't need to practice, we just want to play through. Okay, well, that's great.
Fine, but that's really not what we talked about.
that's a jam session, which is
yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
that's not practice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And by the way, that's when I tendered my resignation. I quit the band.
Yeah, well, and I get that. But first of all, when you told me this was happening, I had my fingers crossed, but I've never heard of that event. That has never come true before. So this was going to be an anomaly. Yes.
Well, actually, I do have another thing coming up. I'm trying out for a band in the first week of June. And this is a band that's an established band that have gigs and the whole 9 yards. So they've been doing it pretty seriously. and they need a keyboard player who can also sing some backup. Well, I'm not sure my voice is all that good, but I told them I would try. I can play keyboard pretty good. I'm not sure I'm all that good on the singing. But they sound like they're more serious, and the fact that they have gigs, paying gigs, and they're ongoing. Like, okay, that could be. I don't know. It may turn out to be the same thing. I don't know, but I'm going to take the next step to find out, because that's also part.
I love the fact that you're going to go forward. And since they're already established, they may already have their whatever's working for them. Now you may get in the middle of it, not like it, but whatever they got going, you're not going to be able to say, hey, by the way, I want to change what you're doing.
Yeah. But by the same token, if they've gotten this far, they must be doing something right.
That's my point. So so no matter what, they're doing something right. If you can fit into what they're doing, this would be a great opportunity.
Yeah. And if it doesn't work out, well, I'll just go find the next one. That's all.
Yeah, just keep looking. Yeah. And so, but the idea that the way our brains operate, and how everybody has their own thing going on, their own opinion they have, and understanding that, and circling back to the comparison process, the belief system, as far as like the law of attraction, which I try to make everything sort of go to. When the big problem with comparison, I've already used the word lack, is comparison creates a feeling of lack. And so that's the energy, the lack. When you're doing that, I'm lacking something because I'm not as good as this person. I'm lacking something because this is happening, and then that's the energy you're putting out there. So there's another side of that. One of my sayings, and I'm a big believer in this, I like to be the dumbest, weakest, and poorest person in a room. I love that. But because I believe, and I'm raised to that energy. I'm not comparing myself in a negative way. I'm just seeing the possibilities that exist, because these titans in the industry, or whatever they're at, they got there. So I'd use it different. So comparison can be used in a way that can be like anything else. There's a perspective to it if you're using it properly. See, yes. The Roger Bannister in 1956 broke the 4-minute mile. And within 2 weeks of him breaking the 4-minute mile, like 20 other people broke the 4-minute mile. So once it was there, people were comparing themselves to Roger Bannister when he proved it could be done. And now there's high school kids running a 4-minute mile. That's wild. Actually, a middle schooler ran a 4-minute mile exactly.
Is that right? Oh, I didn't hear about that. That's
cool. I don't know why I keep up with all that, but I mean, he didn't break it. He ran a flat 4-minute mile at 14 years of age. Yeah.
Wow.
So, which is exciting. So that's the point. When comparison, when we talk about it, has a negative connotation in today's world. Yeah. But if you understand, use it as the benchmark. I am never upset for people's success. I'm always, I've sat in the room with people who have $10 billion, and I'm not, oh my God, he's spoiled or whatever. I'm like, wow, what an incredible amount of money and the work that took place, and for all that to happen. I'm fascinated by that. I personally don't have a desire to have that much money, but I do like to have an abundance. And so my theory is, if I'm in the room with these people who are like that, wow, and it's just going to raise me higher. So comparison can be a tool, but in today's world, the comparison gene, so to speak, it's not a gene, but the comparison thought is is predominantly negative, just because of how people use it.
Which is the key takeaway.
Yes.
It isn't that there's anything wrong with comparison itself. Comparison is actually a fine thing. I can give you another example of comparison that I did over the weekend. I did as you know, I've been into Reiki lately. And so I did a session with a couple friends. We did it. Reiki is all about using energy to heal, but we decided we were taking it to the next level. We were going to use energy basically to do law of attraction, to basically reinforce each other's ability to attract what we're trying to attract into our lives. So we were basically creating a new modality, one that hadn't really been done before. And it was fun. But I also noted I had the most Reiki experience in the room of the 3 people. And I found myself, in a sense, leading that. And I could tell, if I really wanted to, I could have gotten a little bit frustrated by the fact that I I was in a sense the smartest guy in the room, but not really smart, but I was the most experienced person in the room. So it didn't really match the kind of scenario you're talking about where I have more to learn from them. But that's not the way I took it. The way I took it was one of them had been through a Reiki class, another one had never been through a Reiki class, but both of them, in my mind, were very spiritually oriented. So the way I took it was, I wonder what unexpected thing I can learn from them. And you know what happened? I got some unexpected things I learned from them.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool, really.
Yeah. And you know, the idea that you put yourself in that environment, you set out to have a positive experience.
Yes.
You set out to do that. So in that situation, you know, my favorite people to talk to are 8-year-olds.
Oh yeah, sure.
You know, I love having conversations with 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
They are so smart and they look at the world through a way that I wish I could look at the world. I see the world because I'm an adult, and I see their eyes are not jaded or filtered by any problems, or, you know, if an 8-year-old, how do you become whatever? Oh, here's the things you do. And yeah, well, okay, you're right. And they see no barriers or impediment, or they're not filtering for what could go wrong. So, you know, I'm fascinated to talk to 8-year-olds. They're just the coolest people in the world to me. And, you know, and then they hit puberty and they're like, oh, you know, it's like it all just sort of disappears. But, you know, but I love that perspective because they have so much unblocked energy. It's just their brains fully neuroplastic. They're seeing things. You know, there's a scene in the Matrix at the very end when Neo sees the code. You know,
right. Yes,
he sees the code. Yeah. I believe that's how 8-year-olds see the world. They see the code.
Yeah,
you know,
that's a fair analogy.
Yeah, it doesn't. You know, so being, you know, in that case, when you look at, you know, who you're around and the bio individuality of you and what you're trying to do, but anything that you're trying to do that is going to perceive or sort of view as a lack, that's when comparison becomes a problem. When you're using it to say I'm less than because this person, then that's where the problem of comparison is. But if you're using comparison to say this is an expert, this is someone I respect, this is someone that I can learn from, then comparison is a powerful tool.
As you were saying that, I'm recalling Jen had originally set up a slightly different topic for us. It was a topic that you and I were kind of scratching our head as to what she was actually saying, but it included the word gratitude. So I'm going to pull the word gratitude out of it. And I'm going to bring it into what you're talking about here. What you're really talking about is the difference between comparing from a position of lack versus from a position of gratitude.
Yes.
Because the gratitude is, wow, it's so cool. I can get this really cool information or inspiration or thought process or energy from these other people in the room.
Yes. That's amazing to me. I love to, anytime there's enrichment at the University of Richmond, they'll often have a speaker series with different things. And sometimes it's stuff I'm into, neuroscience or whatever, but anytime there's an expert and I have a free night, I will go hear that speaker, even if it's not my topic, because I just appreciate somebody that can discuss, you know, the history of ants, you know, and all that, some stuff that you're just fascinated about, that you get to sit and hear somebody that knows so much about a topic. I just admire that. I'm always fascinated by people with that extreme knowledge. And so it's a really cool thing for me. So it's just not that I'm going to ever go study ants again or ever, but the idea that I can enjoy that expert. There's a guy that I went to, and he spent 7 years in Ethiopia, and I'm talking I don't know if there's any good parts of Ethiopia, but I
hope there are.
What's that?
I hope there are some good parts. I mean, I don't know Ethiopia, but
well, apparently where he was at is not
not there. Okay,
not there. But nonetheless, he was talking about. I was expecting to hear about all the poverty which is there and all the lack which is there, but what he was fascinated about is the resilience of the community. The way the community stuck together, the way the communities kept their, you know, they much lower level of living than we could possibly imagine, but yet the communities were so tight and so protective and so understanding and very knowledgeable. So his talks were built on the resilience and the power of the people of Ethiopia. Even though they lacked resources, they made up with it in other areas, which again I never thought of. But they're an exceptionally resilient people.
That's very cool. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
One thing that occurred to me as we're talking about this is that anytime, of course, we're talking about seeing the positive side of something versus the negative side. We do that a lot with any topic that we talk about, and it certainly applies in this case. But it also occurs to me that this ties into the other topic we touch on a lot, which is we have the power to decide what our response is to a situation. We can't control the situations that occur to us. It's bad stuff's going to happen, but we always get the power to choose how we're going to respond. And we usually bring that topic in as a way to explain that, you can have something bad happen, but you can choose to see it differently. You turn it into in some ways a more positive experience than it would otherwise be, and therefore you are no longer as charged by it in a negative way. You're not adversely affected in a negative way. You're able to gain some growth out of it. You're able to gain some positivity out of it, and therefore keep on your more positive track, which is what you want to be on. That's the way we usually bring the whole idea of response into it. But it also occurs to me in this case, the response piece is directly tied to the comparison piece, in that we get to choose not only what we're going to compare, but how we're going to compare. And that is the response.
That is your perspective of comparison dictates that what comparison does to you. So if comparison, as I try to use it in my case, is to learn more, to be around successful people in any field. And I've never been jealous of these people. I've always just been like, wow. And then, the other side of it is I will never have that, or I'm lacking. Then, that's a response of lack, a response of negativity. And that's a choice. And like anything else, when we use our stoic, because we combine stoicism. I combine stoicism as part of my law of attraction. It's all a big package, And so within that is we will always have the ability to control our thoughts in response to things. That's where our power. You can't control the things, but your response to them will always be in your control. And people don't like that because they can't control the outcome. They can only control the response. But your power has always been in the response.
But that's what I'm saying here. With comparison, that's a time when your response actually does control the outcome.
Exactly.
So it's like almost it's not an exception, but it's like a better alternative than
because comparison gives that option. Comparison can be a tool or it could be a detriment, and you get to choose which one. You get to skip the step that most Stoic questions ask. You get to because it's built into the comparison. So you don't have to say, oh my God, that guy's fabulous and wealthy. How do I feel about that? You determine in the comparison, I'm excited for him or I'm jealous of him. And so it actually takes a step away in a weird way, because it's that way of, or you get up in the morning about how you view the day, what's going to come up in the day. Because the day's always, if you're expecting a bad day, I pretty much will deliver on a bad day. And you have a great day. You walk out the door. I can have some pretty bad days, as you know, but I also know that my response in those days, because my life has no telling what's going to happen, kind of stuff happening all the time,
which you love, I know.
Which I love. It's great for me, as you know. But I also know that at some point my workday will end. I'll go to bed and I'll get up and do it again tomorrow. It's so I view it within that that confines of no matter what I'm going through, I've handled everything, so I don't ever let it take me down. We had another young man in our community, very young man, 16 years old, that passed away from a drug overdose last week.
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah, and those are things that have. This is a very bright young man. He didn't work directly with me, but he was just. I knew of him through the family, and I'm looking at the loss to the family. To the not just the family, but the community. This is someone who just was one of the nicest people on the planet, and he made a mistake and took one bad pill, basically. And so you look at that and you're saying, oh my gosh, and the community is shocked by this, and you're seeing that happen. And but I also see a family that immediate. They're not making the death of their son, a good thing, but they immediately start advocating for addiction. They and treatment for people. That was
Mhm.
one of the first things that was released. They talked about the addiction. A lot of
Mhm.
families hide from that. They want to bring attention to the addiction. They want
Yep.
to, and so that's not going to make their son come back, or it's not going to ease it for them. But there is a response that they're deciding that can be helpful to the rest of the community, which I admire greatly.
It's a great example too of how you can handle a horribly tragic event and turn it into at least have some good thing come out of it.
Yeah, as I told someone close to the family that if one child is hears this and doesn't take that pill, if
That's a
just
victory.
that's a victory. It will not bring their son back. It is
No,
not trying to bring their son back.
no.
We're not trying to stop the grieving process for that. We're also just trying to realize wherever you're at, try to figure out a way to do what you can with it, reframe
Mhm.
it, and then
Mhm.
adjust it. It's I know in the death of my son, it was a very horrible, obviously the worst thing that can happen.
Mhm.
But after my grieving process, I made a decision that I had to in a sense, I had to live for two people now. I had to live for my son. And so
Yeah,
I increased my effort. I increased everything. And since he died in 2014, I was successful then. I mean, I've exceeded any expectation of success since then.
I would agree with
And,
that.
and
Yeah.
so I drive myself with that. That doesn't make my son's death okay, but it does. I took something and said, I'm going to use it to help other people. I'm going to become more productive. I'm not going to, and I'm not going to stop. And that sort of, since he couldn't live a full life, I will live every ounce of my life till I die, every ounce of it. And that's what I made a decision to do. A lot of people don't respond that way.
We talked a moment ago about how so much comparison gets done on social media. I want to share one that's actually a really amazing story in many ways. It has this kind of tragedy involved in it, but it also has the amazing side too. It's the story of a woman who went into a tattoo parlor and asked the tattoo artist to tattoo a number on her arm, I think it was. I think the number was like 392. That was the number of days that her son, I think it was, I can't remember who it was, but somebody close to her had gone, or daughter had gone without taking a drug and then had overdosed. And she wanted to remember her daughter for what her daughter had achieved to stay sober for 392 days, and how it led to a huge number of people coming in to get similar tattoos, not only celebrating their own people in their lives, but it included one young man who came in and wanted to get a tattoo to remind himself that he'd gotten this far. And if he ever had a difficult day, he could look at the tattoo and remember, oh, yeah, I got that far.
Yeah.
So a tragedy turned into an amazing story.
Yeah. And you can take tragedies and you can't make them not be tragic, but
Right.
your response to them can be empowering. It can be helping of others. And so
Yeah.
for the mother that did that, I'm familiar with that story, and it became not only become viral, but almost every tattoo artist you walk in, they'll do it for free.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll just, yeah, here, sit down, we'll just do that. So it's it's acknowledging, it's looking that mom took it. She saw how proud her daughter was of those 392 days, and she never wanted to get, yes, she did overdose, but
Hmm.
she, for 392 days, she fought her ass off and stayed clean. And if
Right.
you've never done that, you have no idea how hard that is.
Yeah. But it's so admirable that she
Yeah,
was able to do it that long. I mean, it
yeah,
is
yeah,
tragic that she lost the battle, but
yeah.
in one sense, she won 392 battles.
She won them, and that's how it feels every day. So it's it's like people that are organ donors. By the way, I'm a strong advocate for being an organ donor.
Hmm.
I know personally a young man in Charlottesville, Virginia, 16 years old, had a really bad tragic accident, and he saved one young lady with a heart. He gave two kidneys. He had, organs saved. I think by the time they were done, there were six people whose lives were saved by the
Wow.
organs that young man, donated within his, the parents as soon as they got to the hospital, he was on life support. He was technically dead. And the first thing the dad said, he said, well, let's keep him alive until we can harvest these organs and get them to the families that need them. And my son will not die in vain. And, you know,
Wow.
it doesn't make his son come back,
No.
but the stories that exist with that. So, you know, the reframe, the ability to the classic, you know, the stoic view of life where where is your power? It exists in your response always. It doesn't exist in the problem or preventing the problem. It exists in your response to the problem or whatever that is. So that's the most empowering thing. You know, I can't control all this, but once I learned to control my response, man, that changed everything.
And since you're mentioning the word stoic a number of times here and using it quite accurately compared to the way most people use it these days, I want to point out the inaccuracy so that we can really highlight what the accuracy is here. Because the inaccuracy, stoic is often used to mean emotionless, which
Right.
is not at all what it means. But
Right.
that's like the current meaning in a sense. And you're not using it that way at all. So I want to make sure we underline that.
Yeah, Stoic. The original Stoics were and Stoic by definition, as you're saying to people, are people who don't express emotions, and that became a definition, you know, based on some of the philosophy, but it's not accurate. The
No.
Stoics are never said we don't have emotion. It's not. Let's not get irrational about things. Let's not. You know, you feel your emotion, you go through it. You can't control things, and most of people's problems in life, or at least for me, is when I was trying to control everybody and everything around me.
Mhm.
And I'm so powerless in that. And the Stoics give us great power. Stoicism gives us power in our response. It's not saying don't be emotional. It's not even. It's not even the
Not even
same
close.
category.
No.
It's just it is a philosophy of dealing with things. And there's a book called "The Obstacle Is the Way" by Ryan. I'm dropping his last name. I'll remember it in a minute. It is a beautiful book. It explains Stoicism at a great level. Stoicism, by the way, is the precursor to cognitive behavioral therapy.
Hmm.
I don't know if I ever mentioned that. It was.
I don't think you've ever tied it together that way. So I'm glad you
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah. So the inventors of cognitive behavioral therapy used the philosophies of Stoicism to create this type of therapy, and
Okay.
it's the form of therapy that I believe in the most. And
Right.
it's
We have
Stoic
talked about
based.
the therapy, I know, and I think you actually have mentioned the connection, but I don't think you actually said that one led to the other. So
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah. So you see within that. So I you know the comparison, original topic of comparison, and you know the ability within us. Every day we get up, we have the ability to choose how we compare. What are we going to, you know, what are we going to focus on today? What are we going to compare today? Are we going to, you know, the influence of other people can be a positive and also could be a negative, and it's often sold packaged as a negative because, you know, I want what that person has, and I don't want to do what they did to get it.
Yeah,
Is
that's right.
often the thing.
Yeah.
So there's a book that I highly recommend called The Psychology of Money. And it's a really good book, and it literally talks about psychology of money.
Mhm.
People who are born into real estate families, they tend to believe in real estate as an investment, blah blah blah.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, your childhood sort of dictates how you believe investing your money in savings. So one of the concepts they talk about, if you were to take $100 a month when a child is 5 years old and put it into just an S&P 500 fund, uh, and you do that every month, $100.
Mm.
Just keep doing it,
Oh my
and
goodness, that'll add up.
yeah. And by the time that child is 60, it'll be a minimum of about $4.5 million based on
Yeah.
historic thing at $100 a month. If that child takes it and does more, so I'm not giving financial advice. Most people think they're going to go get rich quick. Most people get rich by putting money back over time and being consistent about it and moving forward. That's how it works. But the idea is you're going to go do it quickly and without the process, and that's where the problem comes in. Where comparison can come in. I want to catch up with that person without doing what that person did. You know,
Yeah.
my dad, who was very successful, worked really hard in the insurance business for 50 years, and he wasn't always successful, but he became successful.
Mm.
The process wasn't an easy process. When, in fact, I heard people always say, "Your dad's so lucky," and I would tell them, I said, "He's lucky because he worked 40 years, 50 years, whatever that was. I guess you call that luck, but yeah, I guess that's luck. But it's not. He didn't just snap his fingers and have a fortune."
Yeah, his philosophy is probably closer to the harder I go at it, and the more often I fail, the luckier I get.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I've had people that don't know my backstory, look at my life and go, "Man, you are so lucky."
Mm.
And I go, I really am. And I do believe that. I believe I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
But it's not like they're meaning it. I didn't just magically.
Not quite what they had in mind. No, they had something a little bit different.
Yeah. But from my mind, I'm very lucky. I'm very grateful. And so the perspective, like anything else, the perspective of there's really no thought processes is it's how everything is filtered through your brain. The emotional content of your brain, what you're feeling, and what you're believing. And there tends to be people, we tend to have people that keep having the same problems over and over again, and they won't listen to advice, or they won't change what they're doing, but yet still complain about the problems they're having over and over again. Yeah. And I feel sorry for those people because they don't understand. They're the architect of getting better. There's nobody coming to fix it, and they keep thinking somebody is,
or at least something.
Somebody or something, or some event.
Yeah, something is going to happen. So some magic wand is going to fix it all somehow.
Yeah, and so one of my other posts today was as you know, I call my version of the law of attraction. I look at I have never been a lucky enough kind of guy to sit on my couch and get a Lamborghini. I've tried, but it never showed up. In fact, nobody or anything showed up when I just sat on the couch and did that. And I'm not critical of other people's teaching, but I found that the law of attraction is I manifest with first getting my mindset right and then taking intense, decisive action toward that goal. And it's not just action alone, because action without the mindset is going to be circles. Yeah.
I prove that in spades.
Yeah, but action with the right mindset is the tool that makes the law of attraction, at least my version of what I believe in law of attraction.
I'm with you on that. I totally buy into that.
Yeah.
Something else occurs to me too. We have this, the main topic we're addressing today is comparison. And it's certainly with us. We've already highlighted all the different ways that it's with us in our lives. But comparison also is not just about comparing to somebody else. Comparison is also within the self.
Yes.
And I would even go so far as to argue that it's the best kind of comparison to do. The reason I say that is, unless you're somebody who is constantly regressing, and there are people who do that, if you're making any kind of progress at all in your life, comparing yourself now to where you were then is almost always going to be productive.
Yes.
I mean, it's possible to make that non-productive, but for the most part, on average, it's going to be productive. And it's going to often surprise you. I had an example of it today. I did a Reiki share. It was a 2-person Reiki share. I did some Reiki on her. She did Reiki on me. And it was a really good experience. After we were done, when you do a Reiki share, you typically just share your experience. Like, here's what happened to me. What'd you experience? Oh, I experienced this. So you're doing that kind of connection as well. And she was telling me afterwards, she was really amazed at how big my energy level was and how much energy my body was giving off and so forth. And I just sat there in amazement. It seemed incredible to me that she was experiencing that. Now, quite honestly, as I think about the fact that I've been doing this podcast for about 13 and a half years, I've learned from a few thousand people who have come onto the show, all the different things that they've been teaching me, the things that I've learned in my own life experience, going through my own crashes and burns and so forth. I really shouldn't be all that surprised that I have a pretty good energy level. But nevertheless, I was surprised. And it was a comparison that was actually valuable to me because it made me realize, damn, I've actually done pretty good. That's a valuable comparison. That's a comparison. That's one of the ways that you build your own self-confidence.
Well, in comparison in that way helps because part of your probably still stuck in your subconscious is some of the, when I first knew you, some of that negative thought patterns.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The negative self-talk and the feeling of lack and sort of loss. That doesn't just go away. So even though but comparison is a quick way with yourself to show the subconscious brain things are different now. So that's a quicker way to reprogram that comparison, so your subconscious brain, oh my gosh, we are in a different place. So it doesn't take long for that. That doesn't take long at all for it to accept that's the new reality.
Right. So that's why that kind of a comparison is really, really valuable, because let's be honest, when we're going through stuff, we're going through it. So it's often hard for us to see the comparison that other people can see. It's hard to see the contrast between where we were and where we are now, because every step along the way, it was a very small improvement or a small step back, whatever. You kind of lose track of what the overall improvement is. You need that outside perspective in order to identify what it is in many cases. That was certainly the case for me today. But when you get that, and the reason I'm mentioning this is because of that connection. I have a connection with this woman. So that connection enabled her to show me that side of myself that I hadn't really noticed. That when you combine that kind of connection with that kind of comparison experience, my goodness, that does all kinds of things for you. It reinforces your sense of self-confidence and self-love. It reinforces your belief that you can be of service to others in ways that you didn't really think you could be before, but it turns out you actually can be. It turns out that you can also be more in service of your own goals that way. You can feel more confident about your ability to attract. You were talking a moment ago about, you want to attract something into your life. So you think about what it is, but you also take a concerted action. Well, it's a whole lot easier to take that concerted action when you feel like you're actually going to get there. And that kind of feedback helps reinforce that belief. That's huge.
And that's a great point, because in addition to the positive attitude and all the expectation of that, but when I go after something now, there's no doubt. It's funny you say that. There's no question I can go get it now. And that used to be, is that something I can do? Now it's like, no, if my action, if my intense directive action is based in my right mindset with my law of attraction mindset, there's nothing I can't go get. Period.
In fact, I went through another. I've been doing a lot of Reiki lately, as well as being a musician. Those are like two of my main things. But I went through a Reiki session with the woman who's actually the teacher of the various Reiki courses I was taking. And at the end of it, again, we did this kind of share where, here's what happened, what you experienced, here's what I experienced, all that kind of thing. She told me at the end of the session that the impression she got, well, first of all, she said she heard from one of my spirit guides. I don't even know my own spirit guide. She heard from it, like, okay, great. This guy apparently told her that I am a second Renaissance man. Like I'm a man of the second Renaissance. And she said what that meant was that I can dive in and learn anything and get good at it. And I never really thought about it that way. And actually my first reaction was, well, anybody could do that. But as my friend today pointed out, no, not everybody can do that. A lot of people are blocked on doing that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what we're really talking about here is me accepting and appreciating I have this ability to really absorb from anything I want to put myself into. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to learn everything that comes along.
Right.
In fact, I want to learn almost none of the things that come along. But if I really want to learn something, I can do it.
Yes.
That feels really good.
Well, it has to. And then, but also your belief that you can learn everything is a big factor in that too. I mean,
well, that's the whole thing right there.
Yeah. And so that's when you understand it, when you really start to grasp it, because so much of it is that intentional, that there isn't any doubt there. I know I can do this. And so then it becomes just simply the action you take to match that. That's all there is at that point.
Right. Yes. And when you're getting that kind of feedback, I mean, you know what it's like. You can get the feedback you get every day by going to the gym, but you also get it when you work with your clients. In fact, you get it in a number of different ways. You get it with your sons when you come home. You get it in your actions and interactions with them. You get it in interacting with the people that you interact with in your social media group. You're always putting all these things out to people, and you get feedback. I mean, you get a lot of feedback from people. Well, all those kinds of interactions count as well. So you're getting all of this feedback over and over and over again. I mean, that's gotta feel good.
It does.
Gotta feel good.
and it's a reinforcer of, you know, the that becomes a subset of all this as well. So when you listen to the feedback, you know, it's not an ego booster, it is simply a reinforcer, and
Yeah.
then that just reinforces the reality more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so it's this, you know, when you really accept that this process is so exciting, and it's so much easier than you and I tried to make it so many years ago. You know, we've tried to
I'm
make
so
this.
amazed at how complex we made it. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, we had in-depth conversations about
And we were genuinely confused. Let's be perfect. It's not like
yeah.
we were putting it on or anything like that.
Yeah,
We
no,
were trying to make sense out of this thing.
yeah, we were trying to figure it out. But the problem is, you know, it's like we'd read something, it just can't be that simple. Walt.
It
So
can't be that simple, right?
What are we missing? In fact, it wasn't that simple. It was simpler.
It was more simple.
It was even simpler. But to me, mindset is everything, and you know that's sort of the big category of everything. And you know anything that you can talk about will almost always have a good and bad side to it, and you're in charge of that. Whatever the experiences we go through can be lessons or they can be curses. It really depends on your perspective. You know, I was talking to this older gentleman at the gym today, and he's I think he's 80, in tremendous shape, and we were just talking about things, and I didn't even know this. He goes, "Yeah, I was been a diabetic since I've been a child. I've been on insulin since I've been a child."
Wow.
I said, "Oh wow!" I said that. He said, "I said that must have been challenging." He said, "When I'm in my teen years, that was challenging because I didn't want to follow those rules." He said, "But in my adult life, it is a blessing because I have to eat so perfectly clean. I have to work out. I have a regimen that keeps me alive. I'm in perfect health now, except for my diabetes, and it's so well managed that I'm healthier than 90% of the people my age, and my diabetes is the reason why."
Yeah, yeah.
And then I got him to explain my philosophy, and I said, "You took something. You're talking about the advantage of diabetes, not the problem of diabetes." And he, you know, I explained the philosophy behind that, and he goes, "Well, I hated having it for the longest time. Then I understood." You know, I didn't go out and party in my 20s like everybody else did.
Right.
I've never been overweight. I've always kept my body fat where it's supposed to be. I literally monitor my food, every morsel of food that goes in my body. I exercise, I sleep. He said, all of this is built in to manage it. And he said, I feel better today than, you know, I look at my peers, and he said, there's some really old 80-year-olds out there.
Oh my goodness.
I go, yeah. And so he did that whether he even realized it or not. So there's always a perspective of what it does for you. And even, you know, the really the pivotal parts of my life, going to jail, losing everything, and you know, being all that stuff. None of them are good events, but what I did with them, you know, I turned it around. They're learning events. They're events that move me. I move forward from those events. I wouldn't be the person I am today without those events.
There's one other piece of comparison I want to bring in here. Is kind of a way to round off the topic. You've made reference to the fact a number of times in past episodes that I have a very simple emotional guidance scale. Yep. I mean, Abraham Hicks has a 22-point scale. Mine's a 2-point scale.
Yeah, I love yours is the best.
Pretty simple. Yeah. It's either I feel better or I feel worse. There's not a whole lot else going on there.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring that out is that is a comparison.
Yeah.
It's a comparison between just two factors. Do you feel better or do you feel worse?
Yes.
But it's also so simplified. I'm kind of referring to what you said earlier, how, you know, we overcomplicate things that are really very, very simple. Well, I tried to simplify that one. I think I got that one pretty good. But when you have it that simple, it's just coming down to, does X, focusing on X, does it make me feel better? Does it make me feel worse? Does doing Y make me feel better, or does it make me feel worse? Does talking about Z, does it make me feel better, or does it make me feel worse? When you simplify it down to that, that's the kind of comparison that's really productive, because you're not comparing against somebody else. You're just comparing against which one do I want? Yes, absolutely. And that's when comparison can be its strongest benefit, when you look at it from the way you're doing. Is this a better or a worse? Sort of like the old eye doctor, A, B, left, whatever. And so the idea here is just taking that internally, and then you get to measure, you get to do what you want, and then you can use that information to make yourself in a better mood and to adjust that. And, you know,
I never really understood, because I love Abraham Hicks so much, but that was such a random number.
Yeah,
and
that was
so
kind of
many-
weird. I never quite understood that.
Yeah, I mean, but
Well, you know what's even more weird about it? Not only do they have the 22 point scale, but they also have the 22 processes. They have the same number, 22 processes that you can do to improve your situation, and 22 points on the scale, but they didn't seem to correlate that. It's like, where's 22 coming from? I don't get that.
nobody ever answered the 22.
No.
And you know, and again, I love them, so I don't want to be critical of
Oh, I
any
do
of the
too,
stuff.
yeah.
But it you know, some of the stuff like that, I look at it and go, what, you know, I know they're writing books and they needed some, you know, things. And somebody pointed out, a friend of mine who thinks very similar to you and I, pointed out, he said, you know, to be honest with you, if they would have said it's really this simple, it probably would have sold that many books, because it's just too simple.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you have to get into it a little more, but it's like, they have how many books out there, and I love them all.
Oh,
but
I don't know.
in reality, it's
lot.
really about a 10 minutes. Oh, here it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to kind of piggyback on your friend's point, I think your friend's point is valid, but I also look at, how did Abraham Hicks become Abraham Hicks? Well, they came that way because Esther Hicks, with a little encouragement from Jerry, decided to start trusting these intuitions that she was getting and start voicing them and learn how to basically translate these downloads that she's getting, right?
Yes.
And in the process of doing that, early on, it was very rough, because anybody who's tried to channel for the first time, I've tried it. It's unnerving. Let's put it that way. That's probably the kindest way to put it. It's an unnerving process, and you aren't really sure if you're saying the right thing and so forth. So you're trying to put the stuff out there. You want to refine it, but you don't really want to refine it because you don't want to interfere with the message. It's confusing. You're just trying to deal with all of that. In the process of all that, they're actually talking to people who are real people. It was a small group of people in California, but they were interacting with these real people, and the real people had real concerns and real questions, and it didn't really make any sense to them. So it actually isn't all that surprising that Abraham went along with them and complicated, because that was the feedback they were getting.
Of course, yeah, because that was the process. We're talking about the process.
Yeah,
if you just had the thought, like keeping it super basic, you probably would say, okay, well, that's a good idea, and then move on. But the idea that you walk through that entire process to get there, it makes complete sense.
It really does. Yeah. So, okay. I think we did justice to comparison today. So by comparison, we did well.
Actually, and I'm not opposed to cake, but
I still don't quite. I mean, people are wondering what the topic was. The original topic was gratitude beyond the cake. I gotta ask Jen what that is, because I don't really know what the topic is. But we'll save that for another time. In the meantime, thank you all very much, and we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.